Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. We have Alex with us, and the topic for the call is Hyperlocal in 2025, the year of AI search with ContentMassive. Today's webinar is available for CFE credit. If you're attending today's webinar for CFE credit, we want to welcome you this afternoon. If you're not currently an IFPG member, we'd also like to invite you for a free tour of our site and all of the features we offer. We routinely offer our members ongoing educational sessions. You can contact our membership director, Hira, for more information at hirra@ifpg.org. All lines will be muted during this call. Please enter all questions and comments into the questions box and we'll address them after the presentation. If you need anything during the presentation, you can send me a direct chat. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Alex.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alejandro Antonini, and I'm from ContentMassive. Today, we're going to be talking about Hyperlocal in 2025, the year of search, and specifically outlining how search is evolving, how to prepare for it, and some of the things that we're seeing across our extended customer base. So it helps you prepare for what's coming up, not only in 2025, but for the future. So as a background to myself, I'm the founder of ContentMassive. I have 20 years of leadership experience in developing and growing marketing software. In the extent of my career, I've supported over 400 portfolio companies with average valuations of over $300 million and had a very heavy focus on the private equity and the venture capital space, specifically as it relates to carve-outs, buyouts, and pre-acquisition due diligence, along with portfolio company optimization. So just as some context, over the last year alone, ContentMassive has supported over 5,000 franchisees. We've created 7 million pages of localized content that was all AI generated, which equated to roughly 3 billion words of AI content. And some of the services that we include with our offering include Web 3.0, so we have a very unique architecture that we build out for multi-locations, AI content, AI video, AI directory management, AI reviews, and paid search. And below is just some of the publicly traded companies that I've supported, including companies like Intercontinental Exchange, which is one of the largest financial institutions in the world, TravelClick, Amadeus, which processes a good proportion of all of the transactions for the hospitality industry for booking hotel rooms, and a whole range of different companies. So as an introduction, we're going to cover this in 2 different facets, specifically the Web 3.0, the back end of it, and then search. And there's really, if you can look at that chart on the side, there's a couple of different facets to the way that we approach search and website growth, as specifically as it relates to SEO. And it's all central to content. So content is really in the mix, in the middle of that entire mix, and then it expands to a foundation. In order for the content to be activated, you really need a strong foundation, which includes the design, the microsites, the underlying source code, and structured data. And then the next facet to that is the distribution. So really activating that content through different channels, such as organic search, AI search, social media, directories, video, and paid search. So let's get directly into the foundation and what's required to create a perfect source code. So in this instance, we're going to showcase one of our clients, which was Rolling Studs. They're one of the leading power washing companies nationally. And when we inherited their website, and this is not only true to this particular client, but we see the same elements pop up over and over again with our extended customer base that we work with. Just for some additional context, on average, most of our clients have over 100 locations. So they're really in the mid-market for the franchising space, and it goes all the way up to hundreds of locations. So in this instance, we have a mature client with a mature website that, if you looked at the source code of their website, they had a performance based off the Google Lighthouse information of 61 out of 100. And for specific service pages in their multi-location structure, they were scoring at 68. So what we did was we figured out opportunities to optimize that And what we're able to do was really pop that up, where on the home page now has a score of 81, and down to individual service pages has a score of 92 out of 100. Now, the reason why that's important is because speed is very important to Google, and it's really acts as a multiplier for SEO performance. It's part of a rollout that Google deployed not a couple of years ago, actually. It was around mobile first algorithm, where it's really looking at, is your website responsive, not only on the desktop and the different dimensions and devices that are available within desktop, but also on other devices such as tablets and mobile. The other thing we start to look at when we evaluate any specific website for optimization is the design and the customer journey that's available within that design. So if we look at this example of a customer, this was the original website, and what you see is that there's a lot of empty real estate that's available across the page. So what we did was we optimized this to include some clear calls to actions placement, where any page on the website that you go to, you have the opportunity to submit your information. Also including things like trust signals. So we offer aggregate reviews. It's part of our proprietary software package, where we actually roll out all the reviews from all of the locations, and we help give a rating that is verified by Google. In addition to that, we simplify the messaging. So when somebody lands on the page, they know exactly why they're there, and the offering and the services and everything that entails is clearly visible and easy to digest. And then it's just another matter of modernizing the visuals. So we do have a website that looks like it's in current state, but is also flexible enough to be modified for changes in the way that websites are rendered. Now, when we look at a website, we try and build an architecture that includes various microsites. So it's really multi-location. So imagine you have a corporate site and service pages associated to it. Well, if you look at a child website, what you have the opportunity to do is make a clone of that parent site, but also a clone that's localized for each service page that might be on your corporate site. And then what we do is we also leverage our AI engines to expand your overall targeting across the entire website. Now, this becomes very powerful when you think of economies of scale. So you don't do this just for one location, but you're doing it for hundreds of locations at a time. So you're really increasing the volume of pages just at the core level by a large multiplier. And that actually gives you that dual layer architecture where, again, you're applying things in a single place and it's being applied to across the entire network. In order to make this function, you do need to do AI content at scale that's localized and applies to every specific demographic, but also contextualized to that specific geolocation that that website is targeting. And again, having those elements like a Web 3.0 infrastructure really helps you scale that and also address some of those underlying items such as speed. And it also, everything becomes interconnected. So when a child site is created, it's interconnected to that parent site. So the entire franchise chain as a whole sees a huge uptick in overall SEO performance. Now, in order for the hyperlocal content to work and AI content to work at scale, it's really a numbers game. So you're really throwing a lot of volume of content that's structured correctly, perfect code, if you will. But the website has to be set up with the right foundation. And the core element to that is the sitemap files. Sitemap files is effectively how Google is reading and understanding all that content that's available on the website. So in this example, this particular client on a sub page, they had a total of around 40 pages. If we look at what's available after the deployment, after the move to a Web 3.0 architecture, they have thousands and thousands of pages of content, which is all structured correctly. As an example, each one of these sitemap files has 1,000 pages of content. So now they're sitting at around 40,000 pages of content just on the front end. That's very easy for the respective search engines to crawl. And then the last part to setting that foundation is structured data. So Google is absolutely having a hard time reading all this content that's on the page. They only give you a few, a very, very limited CPU to actually crawl your website and understand what's going on there. So the easiest way for these search engines and AI search tools like ChatGPT to scroll your website is to give them a very clear set of structured data. So in this example, in the legacy website, they had no structured data in place. And now you can see there's around 26 items firing on an individual page. So again, it's a lot more information, much cleaner for these respective bots to be able to digest that information on the website. Now, search, how to build a fully integrated engine. Some of the things that we're looking for in the future, now that AI is becoming more and more adopted, specifically applies to zero-click. So zero-click is not something that has just came out of the blue. It's actually been in place for a couple of years now, but it's starting to become more and more and more predominant, and it's taking up more real estate when you go on respective search engines. What zero-click implies is that a user, someone who's submitting a query into Google, where it's Google and all these different engines, they're just answer engines. So what zero-click implies is that they're trying to give you the best response, the best summary of the information, that query that you're inserting into their engine, without you having to click deeper and deeper and deeper into some of these search results. And what that means is that if you have, in this example, power washing in Darien, Connecticut, right? That was the query in ChatGPT as an example. It's going to run through those first 3, 4, 5 search results that are available on Google, and it usually limits to the first 5. And then it's going to read those pages based off of that structured data and try and really understand if there is, if contextually, if the data on those pages match up to the response. And if they do, they're going to present that information in the top search results that are occurring. So this is really zero-click. So in order for you to get into the website, you actually have to click on one of these little items that are available as a citation. Again, this is just the example of ChatGPT. And for everyone to be aware, Google AI overviews have caused zero-click searches to jump from 56% to 69% of all search in 2025. And that's based off of data from Google. The other thing to note is that there's an AI overview that is tracked by a different engine, which is SEMrush, and they saw that over the course of this year alone, just 3 months over 3 months, they saw the amount of queries relating to AI overviews jump from 6.5 to 13.1%. So that's a massive jump. And this is then just an example of how they get to the type of information that the search engine is reading in this particular scenario. Now, how do we approach hyperlocal content, and how should everyone be approaching hyperlocal content, specifically as it relates to AI? So here, this is directly from our platform, and what we're able to do is put in any specific zip code. In this instance, it's Belmont, Massachusetts, which has a zip code of 02478. And let's say that the business has a primary location in this zip code. What we do with our software is we try and determine how far of a radius a specific business is able to service. And then once we've done that, let's say in this instance it's 5-mile radius, we're able to put in all the different cities within that 5-mile radius of that ground zero, so that center point of the zip code. In addition to that, we're able to identify all the boroughs that are associated to those respective cities and the zip codes. So imagine that traditionally you'd only be targeting one specific area from a traditional agency standpoint, which is Belmont, Massachusetts, and let's select a keyword like window cleaning near me. Now imagining you have that content, but now you're magnifying it across all of these different cities, all of these different boroughs, and all of these different zip codes. And that's just for one franchisee and one keyword combination. So you effectively go from one page that's indexed on Google search to around 50. The other item is hyperlocal content is readily accepted by all of these different search engines. And this is the example where this is an AI generated page. And in Google, for the query pressure washing in Darien, Connecticut 06824, which is something very specific, right? It shows up on the second position of search results. If we narrow that down and just put in pressure washing in 06820, which is again a little bit more of an exact match and a shorter variation of that query, we show up on that second position of search result. Again, the reason why this type of targeting is very important is because when you go into any browser, it doesn't matter, again, if it's one of these AI search engines or a Bing or a Google. If you notice on the top left of your Google search results, you're actually going to see that it references the location that you're at. So that includes the name of the city, as well as on the back end, it's really looking at some data called lat-long, which is latitude and longitude. And in many instances, that's immediately digested and translated into a zip code, such as the zip code that's referenced there. So there's 3 points of reference here, and the idea is that you're trying to get a strategy for all of those variations, not only the city name, but also the lat-long and also the zip code. A way that we have found that you're able to see what kind of gaps exist in terms of your keyword strategy is pulling in the top results that exist within your organization, specifically for a keyword combination, pulling in all the different locations and seeing if you actually show up on the top 10 results. And in this instance, we ran it across this particular client, and in a majority of the instances across the entire franchise chain, they were showing up on the first 3 positions of search results. But sometimes getting on the first position of search results for a primary city isn't enough. So what we specifically look at is how can you expand that? And this is how everyone needs to think about AI and how to leverage it to build those content engines. How can I expand my targeting to match up to each one of those geolocations? And the most important thing isn't just to create tokenized content, because that will largely be ignored by Google. It's part of a release that they deployed around 8 years ago, that it looks for content that is replicated and duplicated across your entire website. And if it finds that there's a high percentage of that, it largely ignores all that content and it will never get indexed. So what's important here is that when you're leveraging an AI engine, every single variation of content that's generated has to be absolutely unique to a specific geolocation, also match a specific profile of the person you're targeting. In this instance, it could be a homeowner or it could be a commercial business, and then contextualizing that. And the way you contextualize it is, let's say you have a homeowner that specifically needs something like gutter washing, or to wash the fence or wash the cement. So there you have an inferred interest of an individual that you're targeting. And on the other side of that spectrum, you might say, well, now we know the audience that's coming to the website, create content where I'm specifically promoting or making an introduction to my service that offers gutter cleaning or pavement washing. So again, making sure it's completely contextualized. The results is that you're going to have a unique piece of content, and these are the type of performance uplifts you're going to see. In this particular instance, this client saw a 4 to 5x in performance, not only in clicks, but also on impressions. And that's a number that continues to grow forward. But this isn't a formula that's unique to this client. It's unique to all of the franchise chains that we've deployed, again, 5,000 over the course of the last year. Another opportunity for to accelerate AI performance on search is when AI search is running a query through your website and determining if it should actually rank or make a reference to your brand as a whole. Something it looks at is not only how much content you're generating and if it's contextual and how many pages you have ranked and how many views that it has. All of that falls into the mechanism. But another thing that it looks at is overall trust and authority. And if you look at these third-party directories like Yellow Pages, like Yelp, everyone does a great job at showing up on those third-party directories, but that's not enough. You have to make sure that those directories are integrated with your website, with the messaging, and also that you're constantly promoting it, such as making sure that you're constantly adding reviews, making sure that you're adding new services. If you expand your service territory, you have to reflect that in those profiles, because again, this is a very interconnected web, and you need to make sure that it's a two-way conversation between these systems. The other thing is AI video strategy. So AI is again a way to really scale your overall voice and your messaging across the board. I think the green space as a whole on YouTube search, Google Video, Vimeo, and whatnot, there's a massive gap where very few service providers are actually expanding their messaging to be geo-targeted across all the locations, and that's just referencing the primary locations. As of yet, I actually haven't found too many providers in the franchising space, apart from the tier one like McDonald's, that creates localized content for each one of those secondary cities that they targeted. So again, those are the cities that are within a 3 to 5 mile radius of your primary location. So when creating this content, it's very important is that you're applying the same methodology as being used when you're creating AI content in general, but you're making sure that you're personalizing the overall messaging, so it's brand specific, it's contextualized based off of a specific demographic and a geolocation. So this is an example of one client that we deployed for. This is for Ruderman. And here, if we type in, this is a very expensive keyword as reference, which is emergency plumber. If we reference that specific keyword on the video section of YouTube, they're the first position of YouTube. Now, again, what's important is that this is just one location, but the most important that this can be applied at scale across hundreds of locations at a time and for all of those geo targets that they are able to service. Now, in order for this content to really be activated, you have to make sure that it meets specific guidelines. And once you have the perfect formula in place where you're actually triggering all of not only that the imagery is attractive, that it's easy to be read, but you're also adding in all the structured data like the titles and all the cities that you could potentially cater to, as well as all the metadata that's available in back. And there's around 20 fields that are available across the board. Once all of that is configured, it's very easy to actually to start generating a higher volume of views as well as likes for that specific content. So again, contextualization is key. Another facet is the reviews. So we use an AI engine to generate reviews at scale and aggregate them. Why is this important? Because I'm actually going to show you in a second. But first of all, let me just show you how the product works. Where in this instance, we're able to list of all the listings, all of the locations where franchise chains has a presence, and then I'll automatically identify the Google My Business listing and any review listings that they might have in place, and then aggregate them while filtering out any bad reviews or any information that we might not want to showcase. Now, what that gives us is an output, and again, this is all AI generated. It's an output where it tells us the overall rating of those individual franchisees, as well as the total ratings, total reviews that they have in place. Now, why is this important? When you aggregate all this information, you're able to present that and include it in the source code of a website And the end result is that these different search engines are actually able to read that information. Now, the number of reviews and the aggregate rating of those reviews has a huge impact in your overall ranking, your page rank, if it will. And here's an example of ChatGPT, Google, and Bing. And if we run the query across all three of them, it shows the aggregate rating, which says 27,000. Now, this isn't unique to an individual location. This is the aggregate rating that's available across the entire franchise chain. But the great thing to showcase here is that these different engines are reading that information, and they're actively basing the rank criteria based off of that information as well. And here you can actually see how we're showcasing it for this particular client. So in conclusion, some of the things that we highlighted today is that faster indexing includes higher ranking, and that is part of making sure that you have the right foundation in place. Hyperlocal really allows you to dominate your targeting on organic search at scale. Traditional methods where you had to go to rely on your internal team or your network or even an agency to start creating this content manually, it's just not a fix anymore. It's great for 1 or 2 keyword variations, but when you're competing against brands that are deploying, in some instances, 50, 100,000 pages of content per month, which is what we actively do for customers today, again, it's very hard to compete on the SEO front. And just making sure that everything that you're generating is ready and optimized. So you don't want to get into a situation where you want to go down this road, but you find that the entire your content engine is very manual and cumbersome. So you don't have an opportunity to scale it and really adjust based off changes in the market. So again, having that flexibility of using the right engine to start curating the content and churn it out at an industrial scale is really core to growth in 2025 and beyond. And then the last part is around sitemap and directory optimization. So again, that's the best way that the best chance that Google and these different search engines are gonna have to digest some of the top level content that's available on the website. And again, it seems like that's a topic that's constantly overlooked, because that's usually when we perform an audit, the first thing we look at is the sitemap file just to see what's going on in the back end. 2025 is not about being on page 1. It's about being the answer. And those brands and those franchises that are striving to give the best contextualized answer are going to be the ones that are really being showcased at the top of search results and that are going to win over the next year. And that's what we're seeing again across the entire marketplace, across all this content that we're generating. So now I want to open it up to any questions that there might be.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. The first question is, what kind of franchises see the best results with your service?
We're completely agnostic to industry. As of right now, we do a lot of work with home service, with food service, with legal, customers in the legal space, as well as a fair volume of customers in healthcare. I'd probably say we've got a 40% weighting in home service right now. But again, we're completely agnostic to industry. So to give some more context to that, when we first deployed the software, it was around 4 years ago, and it was specific to a company in the financial services space. We were generating around 1,000 pages of content per day, which again, this was 4 years ago. But the most important thing about how we were generating content is that we were syndicating it. So we were creating that network, that connection between different services and different systems to make sure that you deploy content in one channel and it gets exposed to all the channels. And the end result was that our content was posted on WordPress, and then it would be syndicated on all the social media channels like Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Instagram, Pinterest. The result was roughly 5,000 pages of unique content, well, 5,000 pieces of unique content that were being distributed across all these channels. And then what we do is we get that content, we'd recycle it again in the same day, same session, to restructure the content that we're deploying. And then we'd redeploy that to the networks again. So on a daily basis, we were heading around 10,000 unique pieces of content into these different networks.
Thank you. And what kind of traffic or lead results can I realistically expect within the first 3 to 6 months?
Well, we usually find that ranking of this content takes between 30 to 90 days. And that's regardless of the size of your organization or how much content you're putting out there. It's just the frequency at which Google and these different bots crawl your website. What we found, depending on how many levers you're pulling, for example, if you're doing a website redesign and you're restructuring your entire website, in some extreme cases, we've seen a 50% increase in lead volume for a tier 1 franchise chain. And that is a franchise chain that has over 100 locations.
How do you ensure content is unique and doesn't get flagged by Google for duplication?
Absolutely. So to date, we've probably created around, let's say 5 to 6 billion words of content. So far, we haven't been flagged at all. But when we're generating content, the most important thing is making sure that everything is being generated based off Google guidelines. So we're not using any, when we're creating content, every single piece has to be contextualized to that audience. That's what's Google's requirement. Google just doesn't want you to create tokenized content, so the same page where you're just changing the name of the city and the name of the audience, is this commercial or is residential, right? And replicating that 50,000 times across every single city in America and then posting it to Google. If you take that approach, it's very likely that none of that content will get indexed, maybe 1% or 2% of it. But the correct approach is really to say, okay, well, when you're generating this content, what's the keyword that is in focus? What's the location that's in reference? And then the second part to that formula is figuring out, well, I need to contextualize this so I know the person wants to buy something and I'm trying to sell something. So make sure that you're structuring this entire piece of content so it's unique and it's applying to all 4 of those facets: the keyword, the location, the buyer, and the seller.
Thank you. And are you training your AI on our specific franchise brand language, or is it pulling from general industry data?
We do have the ability of training our models based off of any specific use cases, and we do that in many instances. So as an example, we work in some instances with extremely regulated customers in healthcare. Even in home services is extremely regulated customers. For example, if you do anything with pest control or if you do anything with plumbing, there's a lot of regulation that's in place, and you need to make sure that every single piece of content that you're churning out is relevant to that audience, but it's also in compliance. So we have a mechanism called Guardrail directly within our infrastructure, which can either pull in a reference library of all the information that you are legally permitted to speak about within the realm of what you're promoting, or we can actually give directions to our engines as well to avoid specific topics. So when we generate this content, we can do it at a very large scale, but in a way that is, again, just an introduction to the topic and allows for a deeper dive into the website for more contextual information.
Thank you. And do you have any closing comments for us?
I think the biggest closing comment is that over the next year, we're going to see a major shift in the way that we're reading the data that's traditionally been presented to customers As an example, in the past, a lot of agencies that were focused on SEO, they would primarily rely on Google Webmaster data, and they'd be obsessed with the clicks. Are the clicks going up? Well, now it's not so much about the clicks going up, it's more about how are you converting the audiences that are coming to the website, and are you getting exposed to as many audiences as possible, and are they the right audiences? And that's when you start looking at data such as impressions and clicks. And what many agencies are going to start seeing is that their impressions, if they have the right strategy in place, are going to start skyrocketing, and that's because of zero click. But their clicks might stay somewhat stagnant, or they might even be going down. So again, this is just an opportunity for you to understand is that a lot of that is impacted by zero click, where you're just showing up on more search results, but that isn't going to necessarily be relating to more clicks. The way that it's going to relate to more clicks is if you're giving these search engines the right answers, and more importantly, the better response that you give to these search engines, the higher up you're going to rank. And again, that goes back to that first slide that I referenced, which is right over here, where you either show up in this top 3 or 5 positions of search results, or you're going to get lost in the noise. And I think that's the final point. So contextualization is key, and that's what's going to be what will allow a lot of these brands to make sure that they're staying ahead in 2025 and beyond.
Thank you again, Alex, for your presentation, and to all attendees. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.